Welcome to the Mojo Nation Play Creators Festival. This is a desert island pigs section. Thanks for the reassurance, David. I'm going to be talking to a guest. It's David Vonner. I can't hide him. He's already there. It's David Vonner, and David has been in the industry for nearly 25 years as a designer. Well, hi, David. Thanks for joining us.
How are you guys? How you doing? It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited. Thank you so much.
I can't believe we've not met before, but I'm quite excited because it means that I'm going to genuinely find out more about you as we talk. I'm very
we're going to
excited.
find out so much more about each other, and by the end of the day, we're going to be lifelong pals. I'm sure of it.
You may be right. I would hold judgment on that until the next 30 minutes is up. That nobody necessarily feels the same at the end as they do at the beginning, but let's see how we go. So
at least we got 22 minutes and 8 minutes in between. So we'll throw in 8 minutes of commercial and work on that 20.
Yeah, see how it works out. So now, among other things, I know you've designed the most extraordinary action figures for Hasbro, Spin Master, Jazzwares, Mattel. I mean, it's like a who's who of the toy and game industry, but I'm not sure how it is that you got into the toy industry. How did you come to be working here?
Yeah, well, it really started, I mean, since I was a kid, I've always loved comic books, and so I wanted to be a comic book illustrator, a Marvel comic book illustrator, particularly when Steve Rogers became an artist for Marvel Comics, when Captain America actually became a comic book artist working for Marvel, drawing Captain America. I mean, that was like the world turning inside out for me, so like, and it kind of made it even more real, even though I didn't know anyone in the comic book industry. So that's what I wanted to do. And then when I got, towards high school age, around graduation, I attended graduation. I attended the Art Institute of Philadelphia. And from there, majored in illustration. And then my first job after graduation was with a company called Spencer Gifts. And we had retail malls all over the country. And I think it was a few in the UK as well. And started there. And that's where I designed stuff for the rock group Kiss, Ozzy Osbourne, The Doors, and did a lot of horror stuff for Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. And that kind of led my path into product, designing different types of product, not necessarily action figures, but all around overall product. And then from there, I left there, went to a toy company called Shellcore, which was a baby, a preschool toy company. And that lasted about 6 months. But right after that, that's when I landed at Toy Biz. Right. And this is right when Toy Biz bought Marvel out of bankruptcy. And we were there, from the ground floor designing. And the first project was Lord of the Rings. So I had fun working on that and getting all the stuff from Weta Digital and from New Zealand and Australia and getting all the reference in. And then also working on the tail end of Resident Evil, but then like the first Spider-Man movie, X-Men 2 and Blade and all that stuff. And it was just, so much fun working on the entertainment stuff, but also building up the classic Marvel stuff, which, we were kind of reimagining. It was nothing like that in the marketplace. And then we created, I was one of the guys that was around when the creation of Marvel Legends came about.
And I think in that respect, it is quite difficult looking back for people to remember the time when Marvel, because it's such an animal now, it's such a phenomenal success that it's difficult for certain people of a certain age to remember. Actually, it was a little bit, it struggled terribly for a long time, but you were there at that revival.
Yeah, it was in bad shape. And even like, the comics wasn't doing well, the toys, weren't doing well. And actually, like, we were just doing, Toy Biz did 5-inch, Marvel figures. So even the idea of moving to a 6-inch action figure scale, like, guys weren't prepared for that. Like, no one was prepared for that.
And out of interest, David, why do you think it was down on its luck? Why do you think that Marvel was struggling the way it was, and what needed to change in order for it to turn around?
I think it was because of just the overall business model and the business practices, and also the people that were involved. I think that, the whole comic book industry and as a whole was just kind of tanking at that time from, the constant reprints and, people looking at the comic book industry as a get rich quick scheme. And But I think that overall, like Marvel really didn't have a marketing department. They really didn't understand how to do business, especially like looking at it from the lens of now, how everything is consumer products driven and marketing driven and everything like that. 25 years ago and before that, it wasn't like that at all. It was kind of like, let's throw things at the wall and see what sticks. But it was also like a lot of bad business decisions, and without a centralized focus. But the bankruptcy did an amazing thing, which is shook everything down to its core, and it brought in a whole new regime of not only people who put the business practices first with mindful decisions, but also who love Marvel, who love Marvel as more than just the brand, more than just a logo. Like people who really love Marvel as part of their DNA, part of their core essence. So I think with that, everyone had a common feel to put their best foot forward, to make the best decisions possible, to really take on like an entrepreneurial spirit and really move as one, like kind of take big risks that would warrant big rewards, So I think that's what kind of got the ball rolling, and we were all on the same accord with that. And it was, looking back at it now, like it was just such a fantastic period to be in, because we just all knew where we wanted to go, and that was up because we were at rock bottom.
Yeah, and you can only go up or start to dig when you're at rock bottom. You mentioned earlier, I was interested in Captain America, the first name that came out in conversation, and I don't know why I'm surprised by that. I don't know. He's not most people's favorite. What makes him yours?
Well, I mean, he's one of my favorites. He's not the favorite, but with me, like Marvel characters resonate with me for different reasons. It's personal. Like my favorite three characters are Thor, Silver Surfer, and the Submariner, because they all reflect aspects of my personality, or my life. But then it's like with Steve Rogers, becoming a Marvel artist, that was something that, and I'm reading a Marvel comic book, and I'm reading a Captain America comic book, and he's right. He's drawing his own comic. It just, it made the fantasy become real, because that was something that I always fantasize about becoming real, right? More so than being a superhero, it's about being an artist. And the fact that he was a struggling artist, that he lived in an old flat, that he had to meet these deadlines, that he carried around a huge portfolio, and I had the same thing. And I'm like, man, like he went through the legwork. He had to go he had to knock on doors to sell his art. And that actually prepared me for what I had to do. Right. Like actually had to get my portfolio together, and build my craft up, build my confidence up, learn the lay of the land, knock on doors, no matter where those doors were, whether it's New York or Florida or California. Like that kind of prepared me for the path, because one of my heroes was on that same path. It was more than a hero's journey. There was a personal journey. And that kind of set the whole ball rolling, that there's a possibility that I can do this, at least have the confidence in doing it, even if I could fail.
And in that respect, because I'm interested in that, the hero's journey and the amount of confidence it would take just to try, because I think everybody's, well, no, maybe not everybody, but I think a lot of people have got a fair amount of confidence right up until the first few knockbacks. I've got the confidence to try, but I don't have the confidence to get back up after I've tried and failed and failed and failed and failed and failed.
Right.
But what is it, do you think, that drove you past initial setbacks? What gave you the strength to continue your hero's journey?
Well, the failure part is funny that you mentioned that, because as a kid, particularly as an African-American kid, like I grew up in Atlantic City, New Jersey, in what is considered the projects, like Pitney Village. It was brick row homes. And when you live in an environment like that, there's certain talents that you may have that you want to portray or showcase, and you're constantly being challenged on that. Like, so if you're a basketball player, like guys want to challenge you in your sport. And if you say that you're an artist, that you can draw, people want to immediately challenge you on that. They say, oh, you can't draw, you know what I mean? And they want to see it on the spot. So, and if you would say that you could do a certain thing or a skill like drawing and you couldn't, then the penalty was you will probably get beat up because you're trying to portray something that you're not. So
Right.
being that I grew up in that type of environment, sometimes your dreams get crushed before they even get a chance to grow. Because when you're a child, your confidence level isn't all the way there yet. You have your family that helps build your confidence, and friends that help build your confidence, your family first. But sometimes if they don't have that confidence within them, they don't know how to instill that confidence in the children. And being a child is the most crucial point of development. And we've all been there. We've all been through that point of development. So since like the environment that I grew up in was like, I felt like, there was kids that I grew up around who didn't know that I can draw because I felt I had to guard it so much because I didn't want anything to be dashed. I just wanted to stay on, like, just to develop it to the point where I could showcase it, so I could say that I'm good enough to show it. You know what I mean? So I just had to stay on that. And then once I felt I kind of got to that level, that's when I began to showcase it. So it was really about not only building up the skill set, but also building up the confidence to showcase the skill set. And I'm the only child. I don't have any brothers or sisters, so sometimes that failure comes in the form of bullying or teasing, and it just nicks at your confidence, and you have to find a way to try to build it up. Fortunately for me, comic books was the thing that helped me build up that confidence when I did run into those obstacles of being bullied or picked on, or like, since I was the only child, my family was really, secure in protecting that. So, and my family was as small in that immediate area. So I just had that kind of protection. But as far as trying to navigate socially amongst others, it was comic books that had to help me guide that path.
Brilliant. That's absolutely fascinating. I just sensed there was a story there, and it feels like we should be finishing the interview. It's we went quite deep, quite quick. I haven't even started.
There's a lot of stories, man. I have a lot. There's a lot.
And you know what? Billy, who had a very similar upbringing to yours, as he did in the ghettos of Surrey.
Listen, please. It's one of those words that may translate differently. I want to hear the ghettos of Sussex or the ghettos of, I want to hear it. I want to feel it. It's a common bond.
There are no ghettos in Surrey, fortunately. I don't know how you're going to edit around this, Bill. And I'll tell you what, David, I didn't do the intro. You remember I said I'll do the intro right after we've had some small talk. I didn't do it. So I need to back up and say, here, the whole format of this, before we got into the lovely conversation we just had, is that you're supposed to be cast away on a desert island. So I'm going to ask you, which toys and games? Do you remember? That was the whole point. Which toys and games you would have on the desert island? So looking back then at your childhood, which is how I decided to segue into it.
Yeah.
Looking back at your childhood, which toy or game did you love when you were a kid? What was your favorite when you were a child?
Well, being the only child and growing up in Atlantic City and the area that I lived in, I wasn't poor at all, by no means. Like, my mom worked in a casino. She was a casino pit boss, actually. So at the Sands Hotel Casino. So she had a lot of income coming in. So, and I actually had a lot of toys. So, fun fact, Steve Wynn, the owner of Wynn Hotel Casino, he actually tried to get my mom to work for her. So one of the things he used to do was send me toys to try to woo her to work for him, but that didn't work. But I was like, Mom, don't cut off the toy train, please. But when I was a kid, of course, like, $6 Million Man was my favorite first, superhero. But in the 80s, like, it was G.I. Joe and the Masters of the Universe, like those toys, those action figures, like really resonated with me big time.
So that must be, in that respect, it must be a tremendous thing, because I'm struggling to think. I obviously I know a fair few people in the toy and game industry. I'm struggling to think of people who loved action figures when they were kids and got to be action figure designers, there can't be many people that literally end up designing the very thing that they played with. I mean, that's
or I give you the trifecta, has become an action figure.
Oh, become an action figure. Well, tell me about that. How have you become an action figure?
Well, that was at my Toy Biz days with working on Marvel Legends, and we finally got a chance to do James Rhodes, who's War Machine, who is Tony Stark's best friend, who was, of course, Iron Man. So when we were doing the sculpts for the figure, we had to reuse some body parts, but the head was going to be all new. So so the product manager, who is the creator of the line, Jesse Falcon, he came to me and said, "Hey, you want to be Roadie?" And I said, "Yeah." So our sculptor, Dave Cortez, who is like one of the best sculptors in the world, he came in and took a few pictures of my head, front, right side, left side, and then he just started sculpting right away. Like, we're sitting there having lunch, and he has the wax in his hand, he's going at it, and we're sitting there talking. Then he goes home and he sculpts some more, and then he really dials it in, and then it comes back, and it was me. And then but at the time, I didn't think of, wow, I'm going to be an action figure. It was really about trying to hit a deadline. We were just trying to hit the deadline because Jesse didn't have a head ready, and also, like, the lines, when you're developing action figure line, particularly at that time, the essence or the dynamics of the line may change. So the characters may come in and out depending on the right fit. So finally, Roadie got thrown into there, and we needed a head done. And also, James Rhodes is an African-American character. I'm the only African-American guy in the office. So Jesse's like, "Hey, you want to be Roadie?" Like, because we need a head quick. So I said, yeah. And it was really just like that. And then and honestly, when it came out, because we worked on so many things and so far in advance, I kind of forgot about it, and when it came out, like, that's when the fans actually, kind of took it to a life of its own, because they finally got out that we were actually sculpting designers, because it wasn't just me in the line. Like, there's Damon Nee, he's one of the Eastern Warriors in Lord of the Rings, and James Matter, he's another warrior in Lord of the Rings. So we were actually using our heads in different figures and like sliding them in. So particularly during crunch time. So, like, that's just what we did. And it just got out, and then it took a life of its own. And
do you still have one of those figures? That's something you own?
Absolutely not. I don't have not one in my possession. Some of my family members have some, but I don't have any, because I had to give them away. I gave them away to my family, and I'm like, yo, I don't have a tree where I can just pull them all off. And also, War Machine wasn't as popular as he is now. Well, it wasn't really that many that was produced, so I really didn't have that many to begin with.
That seems like quite a life's quite tragedy. That is a terrible wrong that must be righted. We must track down one of those figures. I certainly will put up a picture of one so everybody knows what we're talking about, and then hopefully we'll be inundated.
Yeah, but the fun part of it is that it's part of a build-up figure, and then it comes with a Galactus piece, and that was actually one of the reasons why I did Galactus at Hasbro. It was like I wanted to kind of pay homage to that whole thing. So if you kind of dig deep and know your Marvel Legends lore, it kind of, if you had that thought, well, I'm kind of confirming it right now. So.
Right, brilliant. All right, great. Well, there we go. So I don't even remember what the other question was. That would be what time?
Oh, the desert. The desert. We're on the desert, and we're stuck, and I'm trying to get off this desert. That's what all my was geared to.
That's right. So if you were stuck on a desert island and you were allowed anybody, living or dead, to be on the desert island with you, with whom would you spend that time? With whom would you be trapped on a desert island?
And I think my answer, I'm changing, right? It would be Shipwrecked from G.I. Joe. Like, that's who it would be.
Right. Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Now I see G.I. Joe in the UK is not so widely known. We are not familiar with the characters of G.I. Joe. We had, I guess, our equivalent was Action Man. Did that translate to the US? I don't know if it did.
Oh, yeah, it did. It did. But I guess with you guys, because the whole idea of war is kind of viewed differently, right? And even like with GI Joe, I mean, the idea of the guys who worked on it previously, who they wanted to inject that whole Americana coming out of the Vietnam War, kind of, you
Yes.
know, pushing that like subtle agenda. And I think that in other aspects of the world, you know, war isn't viewed like that.
No,
You know,
you're
and so,
absolutely right.
so
There's,
and
although
and
interestingly,
also too, I'm sorry to cut you off, but
no,
also too,
please.
this was also during the 80s too, during the Reagan era. So politics played a subtle role into everything, particularly who guys who had a political role or political feelings, and they just happened to be working for toys.
Yes, yes. No, I noticed at the end of the episode of G.I. Joe that I watched leading up to this, there were these sort of little public service announcements at the end, which were, I mean, they told a hell of a lot of a story in a very short period of time. They're very quick. But
Yeah.
I watched that and I kind of thought, gosh, I wonder what they're trying to do there. I wonder if that's just to make it a little bit more palatable because it's approved by
Right.
somebody in
Well,
America.
I mean, also too, like also in America, you know, like when my mom was growing up, like having drills in school, because like bomb shelter drills was a common thing. You know, like when they were kids, you know, they would have like the air raid sound go off and kids have to go under their desk or go into the basement. But
Wow.
in order for kids to kind of do this thing, they had to make it almost like, you know, like a fire alarm or a drill or something like that. So that's how it was when she was a kid. So when I was a kid growing up in the 80s, particularly in the Northeast, you know, this is when the relations between the Soviet Union and America wasn't so well. There was tons of MX missiles being built and all that. And I think that the whole public service announcement kind of came out of that Cold War era to prepare kids for what was going on in the 80s at that time. Because if you look at the movie Red Dawn, the GI Joe infomercials are nothing but almost like you can feel that whole film. It's all about survival. It's all about how, if something happens, what you need to do to be self-sufficient, to take care of whoever's around you because of the time period that we're living in. And
Wow.
that time period was really about American propaganda, because there really was a lot of Cold War stuff that was still happening in the 80s with the relationship that was going on.
Yeah. So the character's name again for me was on the island?
I think I hang with Shipwrecked. You know, Shipwrecked loves to have a good time. You know, I think he will make jokes of his name because we're shipwrecked on this island. He'll try to get off.
Yeah.
You know, and he's a Navy guy, you know, I mean, or Marine guy, you know what I mean? So, you know, he knows the war.
That'll come in handy. So. and speaking of names, I was meant to ask earlier, Vonner, where is that from? Sounds German. What is the name?
Well, it does have German roots. Clearly there was no Vonner Africans running around. So so I think actually I did a DNA search, and when I found out in my DNA search that I actually have Nigerian roots. So I think that somewhere during the transatlantic slave trade, like that's when I'm also have some Norwegian DNA, some English in DNA. And so I think during a certain time period, there was some things that was going on that right now it's kind of bubbling to the surface, hence why Black Lives Matter and why there's a huge reckoning going on around the world. So, but I think that during that time, that's what happened, but that's the origin of that name. I have no connection to whoever Vonner is, but now I get to make it something that is way more spectacular. And
well, I was going to say, now people want to lay claim to that name because they want to be associated with you. It goes that way. I think it's it's an interesting name. I'd never heard it before, so I was curious about that. Do you know what? You're not going to believe this. We're almost out of time, so I need to push on, and I can't believe.
See, you can't get me to start talking, because when I go. I don't
know how we did it. It feels like seconds ago, but we've got a little bit of time on the clock, so I will press on with the questions I have to ask.
Let's do it.
And then when we're finished, we'll carry on chatting after. Much more interesting. So you're on a desert island, and obviously, here's the thing. Obviously, I've focused an awful lot on your action figures. That's the thing that I think you're probably best known for. But you've done a whole bunch of other stuff. So by no means should you feel restricted just to action figures. In terms of the other stuff that you've designed, if you had to pick one of your own designs and say this is a sensation, this is terrific, which of your own designs do you think I would be saddled with it for the rest of my life, but I would still appreciate it after years on a desert island? Which one of those designs is yours?
Wow, which one of my designs? Oh man, I mean, it's so many, and you really don't. There's always something that you can nitpick about your design. You know, but hence why you also have a team, which makes your design so much better. You know,
Yeah.
so I mean, man, I think that if I had to be stuck with one thing that I
No, you
designed.
seem really flawed by the question. It's like, oh my God, one of my own. Oh,
I know one of my own. I mean, I can definitely think of someone else's, but one of my own, I mean, man, I think it would have to be, you know, I guess maybe one of my, the huge Galactus figure that I did, you know, because I can also use it as a friend. Like it could be my buddy, you know, like in Castaway, when Tom Hanks was stuck, he had his little soccer ball, Wilson, that he had as his friend. So I can use Galactus as my buddy because at least he lights up, at least he talks. I can be mindful about the power usage, not use the battery so much. And maybe my mind would start to play tricks on me where he'd give me answers to get up off this island and find a way to the path of survival.
I love how determined you are to survive and get off the island. It's all about that. I mean, a lot of people will be stranded on their desert island. Is my dream come true? This is a sensation.
No,
but no, you got to get back.
I don't want to be stranded. I don't want to be stranded. I want to be around people.
Okay, well, and then you touched very briefly on the question. Then it was easier. I think you just said it would be easier to pick somebody else's design and say, this is terrific. I would love to be stuck on a desert island.
If I was stuck on a desert island, I'd definitely like to have a rubber ducky so I can get up like, I can float right away. I mean, I can get a branch from the palm tree, use the giant rubber ducky as a floating device and get up out of it, no problem. And if I float long enough, then I can find a ship that will blow by and they'll pick me up, and then I'll be a whole nationwide hero because I've been on this island for so many years.
There would be no greater sight, as far as I'm concerned, than a human being being saved from a desert island by rowing away on a giant rubber duck to tell their story.
It's yellow, so hopefully it's bright. It'll be seen. Like there's a whole rhyme to the reason. It's safety.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's what Tom Hanks needed. He needed to keep looking through those FedEx boxes until he came to a giant rubber duck. He was off.
Right. Yeah.
He gave up with the ice skate. Mad. Brilliant. Listen, we need to start wrapping this up, but I have one more question for you, and I worry about this because this question. At times, people think it's a very morbid question, and I don't think innately that it is morbid. But if you want to take it as very serious, you can, but you don't have to. It's just I'm always curious to ask people that not necessarily in the desert island context, but here you're on a desert island. You worry that you haven't got your rubber duck, and you may not get off the island. Under those circumstances, David, what would your epitaph be? What would you like to leave behind as a message that summed up your life or represented your values? What sums it all up for you?
I think I would say I was never stuck on this island, was always a robot. I'm out of here. I rule the world. Cobra! That's what I would leave behind. It was Cobra Commander the entire time.
Brilliant. I'll tell you what, yeah, I guarantee that no matter how many of these we do, nobody else is going to end up rocking it like that. Cobra, brilliant. Wonderful. Well, listen, I've enjoyed our time, and I hope we'll have you back for something else. I've got a feeling that if we asked you back to do a room, you probably don't know what it is. I don't think they have a show on TV called Room 101 in America, do they?
No, I haven't heard of it, but you know what? I'll be happy to join this version of Room 101. No. Room 101 on HBO. Yeah, I watched it. I love it. It. It's an anthology series. Yes. I had to say it to remember.
Is it a mythology? I don't know. Well, over here, you've got we line people up and they have to say, these are my pet hates. and you
Oh
consign
no, it's a
them.
different show.
Yeah, a
Sorry.
different show. I know what the hell you just signed up for.
You get lost in
Community.
translation.
We'll
My
do
wife
both.
is shaking her head. My wife is shaking her head. It's like, once again, we have derailed.
Well, whatever your version of Room 101 is, it might be possible. I'll look into it. But our version, we'd invite you on it, and you would just consign a certain number of pet hates in the toy and game industry into an eternal pit of despair. That's a good note to end on. But yes, we'd love to have you back for that sometime. We'll sort it out.
Thank you so much.
In the meanwhile, what a delight this has been. I thank you so much for your time, David. It's been a great pleasure. Thank you so much, David Vonner.
Thank you so much.